Hey friends, and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to talk a little bit about protein synthesis and muscle protein synthesis. So kind of like a little bit of a way to understand like what your intake should be for protein, and also the difference of how you're going to kind of create more gains. So working with a bunch of clients, including myself going through preps and prepping myself through a bunch of competitions as well, I've finally have kind of found a way to explain protein intake and the importance of getting enough in for your goals. So a couple of things to consider. There is some research, and I'll caption it below to cite it. There is some research where there's nothing that shows and states that there's too much protein to consume. So there is a thing where you can underconsume protein, and that can cause a little bit of an unhealthy like metabolic function, which is going to affect your immune system, your bones, your skin, your eyes. I mean, there's so many different factors that, you know, protein can help with your bodily functions. But there's no such thing as like having too much protein, and protein does not show any state or fact of gaining body fat. So unless you do have like a medical condition or something that's going to cause an issue consuming a certain amount of protein or high protein intake, that's another story. Always go with your doctor on those aspects. But in general, like, you can consume quite a bit of protein and not have any issues there. The one thing too is like there's a process called gluconeogenesis. So if you're under consuming carbohydrates or other fuel sources, your body will convert protein into an energy source. It's going to be a lot harder. It's not as effective. It's going to convert that into glucose. So it's something that your body needs for energy. So just talking about protein here alone, it seems like a lot of people get really confused on how much protein to consume. And, you know, people think that, oh, well, I'm gonna start working out, so I'm gonna start consuming a protein shake, and they associate supplements and protein shakes with working out. Now, you do not necessarily need a protein shake just because you're working out. You can be sedentary and just trying to, you know, increase your health, have enough protein because maybe you're not getting it from foods, maybe you're vegetarian, vegan, and there's ways of not getting enough protein intake from, you know, not having those meat sources. So that's where a lot of people will go to having a protein shake. Now, you don't, like I said, you don't need to have a workout regimen in order to have a protein shake. It's just looking at your overall health and seeing what that intake should look like and what that should look like. So the government has an RDA, the recommended daily allowance, to be 0.8 grams of protein per kilograms. Now, you can always go in there and convert your pounds of weight to your weight times 2.2 and get your kilograms. But even though I have an equation here because I used it already, so that way you can just kind of get an idea. But a lot of times us in America do not use kilograms, we use pounds. So I'm going to simplify the whole equation, and just understanding that the recommended daily allowance is just for your healthy metabolic functions and the benefits of that, and also to get pretty much like the basic amount of protein you need. Now, anything over that, so like if you're trying to gain muscle, if you're trying to be more effective burning fat, which requires building muscle, you need to consume over that 0.8 amount. So if you're looking at your intake going, well, I'm having 50 grams of protein today, that's literally like the bare minimum that you should be consuming for your health and body functions. But you need to consume over that in order to achieve more desirable results for your body goals, for your physical goals, and if you're trying to gain some muscle. That doesn't mean you're trying to be all bodybuilder or like big and bulky. It just means that you're going to be more effective at burning fat and keeping on muscle that you're trying to build. So if we look at like the kilogram conversion, I weigh 126, so 126 divided by 2.2 is 57 kilograms. Now, my RDA for that would be the 57 kilograms times 0.8. That's literally only 46 grams of protein a day. I would die and I would get sick a lot, especially for me working out 5-6 days a week. Now, the you know, very, very sedentary person that's not working out or doing much of any activity would probably be about 46 grams of protein a day, and their calories overall are going to be lower. So looking at that aspect, but also if you're trying to work out and you're trying to go over that amount, the real recommendation is increasing that amount by 3 to 5 times more than that 0.8 amount. So if we were to say 1.6 to 2.4 is that multiplication that should be from the kilogram conversion from pounds. 1.6 grams of protein times my 57 kilogram weight would be 91.2 grams of protein. And then if I were to use the higher end of that spectrum, more activity, it would be my kilograms of weight 57 times 2.4 is 136.8, so 137 grams of protein. Now, for me personally, I can really be a testimonial to this, is because when I was eating 100 grams of protein, thinking that was the right thing to do years ago when I first was prepping myself, I was just straight up lowering all my calories down. And that was also including protein. So I ended up having about 100 grams of protein, and I felt more sickly. I felt more fatigued. I was starting to get worn down faster. And when I started to do my preps the year after, when I learned a little bit more and changed that number to decreasing carbs and fats more and leaving my proteins the same, I realized that keeping my proteins at like 120, 130, maybe even 135 sometimes, was a very nice sweet spot. And that's exactly what the kilogram conversion is. Now, if we're leaving just our pounds, don't worry about kilograms. There's an easy equation just saying, okay, whatever your goal weight is times your weight is going to be, or sorry, whatever your goal weight is should be the amount of protein that you consume. So if my goal weight was 150, I'm going to consume 150 grams of protein. But I do know that my goal weight sometimes is just to stay where I'm at. If I'm dieting down, I honestly don't want to lower my calories too low and my proteins too low, because I am very, very active. So what I tend to do is do the equation, the same concept where we're doing like the 0.8 or the 1.2 or the 2.4 multiplications. So what I do is, looking at my paper, if I'm doing my weight times 0.8, my minimum amount of protein I should consume a day for my activity is 100.8 grams of protein. Now, if I'm trying to consume more protein because I'm trying to build muscle and keep muscle on, I would want to consume anywhere from 1.2 to 1.5. So if I'm doing a 1.2 times 126 of my weight, I'm having 150 grams. If I do 1.5 at the very higher end, it's 189 grams. I've found that the past 2 years consuming 175 grams of protein, I weigh 126 pounds. The most I've weighed is 129. Is helped me gain a lot more muscle and keep muscle on. But when I was doing 120, 130, I was getting results, but I felt like it wasn't necessarily the same. And my calories overall are lower than what they used to be. I used to consume 28 to 2,900 calories before prepping for a show, and now I'm sitting at 2,400. My proteins are higher, my carbs and fats are still in a good, healthy place, but they're not as high as they used to be. I'm not eating, 400 grams of carbs a day. I'm now eating like 270. But the calories are able to increase because of the protein, and I feel more leaner, but I feel more stronger, and I've seen more muscle development. I will say I have not done any test or like body comp test or anything. I'm just going off of the way I physically see, but I'm very in tune with my body. I've done tests for years, and I have a good idea of where I'm at, and so it's just kind of cool to kind of see and play with it yourself. And if I were to go take a test now and compare it to the couple of years ago of the way I was explaining I was dieting before, I would probably see a large increase in muscle mass, lean muscle mass. So the difference I want to explain too, and I should mention this a little earlier, is like you have protein synthesis, but then you have muscle protein synthesis. So if we're just sticking to our RDA of muscle synthesis, or sorry, protein synthesis, the protein synthesis is just enough to get by bodily functions. But if I'm consuming more, so not the 0.8, but more of the 1.2, 1.5 amount, and increasing that protein intake, I'm going to have a better chance of keeping muscle on and building muscle. So think of it like the calorie bank, right? So if you're consuming more calories than energy burnt, you're going to gain weight. But if you're consuming calories and burning more activity, you're going to lose weight. So it's the same concept of this, like you're consuming more protein and you're expending energy, and you are like losing some muscle, but you have more protein, you're going to prevent that muscle loss. So it's kind of like more, I'm trying to find a way of like visualizing it for you guys, but like taking it as a plus and minus. So if you're working hard and you're building muscle, and you're not consuming enough protein, you're just going to have a breakdown more of muscle mass if you are, not consuming enough protein. So overall, in the grand scheme of things, every day focus on hitting your protein intake and your calorie intake so that you can continue to grow muscle and even preserve the muscle that you have, versus if you're always in this deficit of calorie intake or even protein intake and you're just getting the bare minimum for, the recommended daily allowance, and you're working out really hard and you're not getting that extra 40 grams or the extra 50 grams and you're missing it every day, it's more detrimental to your results because you're working so hard for it and you're not consuming enough protein to help build the muscle and get the recovery that you need to continue to work hard and get the result that you desire, like mentioned a second ago. So I hope that kind of simplifies things. If you are, looking at building muscle, you need to be over that daily allowance of protein intake. Don't be scared to eat more protein, and know that it takes a little bit of time to get that number increased up. When I went from 120 to 130 grams of protein to 175, I swear it took me about 3 to 4 weeks just to get that number up, and it was very challenging to, just get there. So if you have any questions, I'll have some stuff cited below, and you can always reach out to me by email or through YouTube. Thank you for watching, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.